Finding a room to rent in a bustling city seemed like a stroke of luck. The ad was straightforward: a nice house, affordable rent, and a friendly roommate. When I first met Dave, he seemed like a genuinely nice guy. Tall, athletic, with an easygoing demeanor, he welcomed me with open arms. "I hope you like sports," he said, grinning. "I love watching games." At first, it was great. We'd grab some beers and settle in to watch football, basketball, even baseball. Dave knew the stats, the players, the history of every team. I enjoyed his company and the enthusiasm he brought to our living room. But soon, I noticed a pattern. Dave wasn't just watching for fun. He was a gambler, and he was in deep. The signs were subtle at first: a tense expression when a game didn't go his way, the constant checking of his phone, and the frequent calls he took in hushed tones. Then came the late-night visitors. Sketchy-looking guys would show up, have a brief, terse conversation with Dave, and leave. I didn't pry. It wasn't my business. But one night, things escalated. We were watching a basketball game, Dave's eyes glued to the screen, a bead of sweat on his brow. His team lost in the last seconds. Dave's face went white, and he stormed off to his room, slamming the door behind him. The next day, I found a note on the kitchen table: "We need to talk." When Dave came home that evening, he was a mess. "I owe a lot of money," he confessed, "more than I can pay back." He explained that his gambling had spiraled out of control. He owed thousands, and the people he owed were dangerous. Very dangerous. The threats started the following week. Harsh knocks at the door in the dead of night, angry voices demanding money. Dave tried to keep me out of it, but it was impossible. Our home was no longer safe. One evening, two men barged in, looking for Dave. They were big, with tattoos snaking up their arms and cold, dead eyes. "Where's Dave?" one of them barked at me. "I don't know," I stammered, fear clutching my chest. They found him in his room. I could hear the sounds of a struggle, Dave's pleas, and then a sickening crack. When they left, Dave was crumpled on the floor, his hand twisted in an unnatural angle. They had broken one of his fingers as a warning. "You've got a week to get the money," one of them snarled, pointing at me, "or you're next." I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't my debt, but I was caught in the middle of it. The next few days were a blur. Dave was frantic, trying to scrape together enough money, but it was hopeless. The threats kept coming, more intense each time. I slept with a baseball bat by my bed, jumping at every noise. One night, I had enough. I packed a bag, intending to leave at dawn. But fate had other plans. Around 2 a.m., the door crashed open. 4 men stormed in, their faces twisted with anger. They grabbed Dave, dragging him into the living room. One of them looked at me, his eyes narrowing. "You," he said, jabbing a finger at me. "Get over here." I froze, my mind racing. He grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet. "You think you can just leave? You're in this too." They made me sit on the couch, forcing me to watch as they beat Dave. Each punch and kick echoed through the room, a grim symphony of violence. I felt sick, powerless. Then, one of them pulled out a knife, pointing it at me. "Maybe we should leave a message for the new roommate," he said, smirking. "A little something to remember us by." He grabbed my hand, pressing the blade against my finger. I could feel the cold metal bite into my skin, the pain sharp and immediate. I closed my eyes, praying for it to be over. "Enough," another man said. "He's not worth it. Let's go." They left, slamming the door behind them. I sat there, shaking, blood dripping from my hand. Dave was barely conscious, muttering apologies through swollen lips. I couldn't stay another second. I grabbed my bag, my heart pounding, and left. I didn't look back. I found a motel for the night, then started searching for a new place the next day. I never saw Dave again. Moving into a new room, I hoped for a fresh start, but the nightmares lingered. Every creak and shadow filled me with dread. Trusting a new roommate seemed impossible, the fear of reliving that horror ever present. Life moved on, but I was forever changed. The city seemed darker, the people less trustworthy. I knew I'd always carry the scars of that night, both physical and mental. And as I lay in my new room, listening to the silence, I prayed I'd never have to face such terror again. I never expected to find myself in such a twisted situation. When I accepted an invitation to share an apartment with my coworker, Lisa, it seemed like a perfect arrangement. We worked together at a marketing firm in the city, and I was new to the area, eager to make friends and settle down. Lisa was friendly and warm, and her boyfriend Billy seemed nice enough at first. But things took a dark turn quickly. It started with small touches. Billy would pat my back or brush his hand against mine as he handed me something. I didn't think much of it initially, dismissing it as friendly gestures. However, it didn't take long for these touches to become more invasive. One night, while Lisa was out, Billy hugged me from behind in the kitchen. I froze, feeling his breath on my neck, but managed to pull away, mumbling an excuse about needing to finish cooking. "You're so tense, Victoria," he said, his voice dripping with a mix of condescension and something else I couldn't quite place. I forced a smile and busied myself with chopping vegetables, my heart pounding in my chest. The next few days were a blur of uncomfortable encounters. Billy found reasons to touch me whenever Lisa wasn't around. He'd put a hand on my thigh when we sat on the couch or brush my hair back under the guise of checking for split ends. I tried to avoid him, staying late at work and retreating to my room as soon as I got home. But Billy was persistent. One evening, he cornered me in the hallway. "Victoria, you can't keep avoiding me," he said, his eyes dark and intense. "I know you feel the same way I do." I was stunned. "Billy, I don't feel that way about you. You're Lisa's boyfriend. This is completely inappropriate." His expression shifted to one of anger. "You're just scared. You need to stop playing hard to get..." I pushed past him, feeling a rising panic. I needed to talk to Lisa, but she had been so enamored with Billy that I feared she wouldn't believe me. Still, I had to try. That night, I sat Lisa down and told her everything. Her face turned pale as I spoke, but instead of the understanding I had hoped for, she looked at me with cold suspicion. "Billy told me you've been coming on to him," she said, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "He said you've been making advances, and when he rejected you, you became vindictive." I was speechless. "Lisa, that's not true. He's lying to you." But she wouldn't listen. She stormed off, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever. The atmosphere in the apartment grew unbearable. Lisa barely spoke to me, and Billy would smirk at me whenever he saw me. I began to feel increasingly unwell, constant headaches, nausea, and a strange metallic taste in my mouth. I thought it was just the stress, but when my symptoms worsened, I decided to see a doctor. The diagnosis was shocking: heavy metal poisoning. The doctor asked if I had been exposed to any unusual substances. I racked my brain, but nothing came to mind. Then a chilling thought struck me. Could someone be poisoning me? Back at the apartment, I started noticing things I hadn't before. The faint, bitter taste in my water, the odd smell from my food when Billy cooked. I couldn't stay there any longer. I packed my bags and left that night, leaving a note for Lisa explaining everything. I didn't know if she'd believe me, but I couldn't take the chance with my life. I moved to a small town upstate, far away from the city. I quit my job and started anew, taking time to recover both physically and mentally. The nightmares persisted, but gradually they lessened. I never heard from Lisa again, and I didn't want to. The memory of that apartment haunted me, but I was determined to move forward. Years later, I stumbled across a news article. Lisa had been hospitalized for severe poisoning, and Billy had been arrested. It seemed he had been slowly poisoning both of us. I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that he was caught, but sorrow for what Lisa and I had endured. Now I live a quiet life, far removed from the chaos of the city. The scars from that experience run deep, but I've learned to trust my instincts and value my safety above all else. The ordeal taught me a harsh lesson about trust and the darkness that can hide behind friendly faces. I share my story to warn others. Sometimes the monsters aren't lurking in the shadows but living right beside us. The ad seemed innocuous enough. Room for rent in a quiet neighborhood. Must respect house rules. No smoking, no pets, no entry to the basement. I didn't think much of the last rule. I've seen stranger requests. After all, the price was right, and the location was perfect for my new job. When I met Mark, the homeowner, he seemed like a regular guy. Mid-30s, neat and polite. His eyes, though, had a peculiar intensity, like he was always watching for something. He showed me around the house. A cozy living room, a well-equipped kitchen, and my bedroom, which was small but comfortable. The tour ended abruptly in the hallway. Mark pointed to a locked door and said, "That's the basement. Remember, it's off limits." I moved in the next day, and life in the house was uneventful. Mark worked odd hours and kept mostly to himself. Occasionally, I'd hear strange noises coming from the basement late at night. Low murmurs, a rhythmic thumping, and once, what sounded like chanting. I chalked it up to the house settling or Mark watching some weird movies. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. Mark was out, and the house was eerily quiet. The basement door loomed in the hallway, an invitation I couldn't resist. I found the spare key hidden in a drawer, my heart pounding as I turned the lock and descended the creaky wooden steps. The basement was dimly lit by flickering candles placed in a rough circle on the floor. The air was thick with the scent of incense and something metallic, like blood. My eyes widened in horror as I took in the scene. Symbols drawn in what looked like crimson on the walls, animal skulls arranged in bizarre patterns, and in the center of it all, a crude altar with a large black book. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe Mark was just really into some weird hobby. But the deeper I looked, the darker it got. I picked up the book, its leather cover cold and almost pulsating under my fingers. Flipping through the pages, I saw diagrams of grotesque creatures, rituals involving human sacrifice, and spells written in an ancient, indecipherable language. A sudden creak from the stairs made me drop the book. Panic surged through me as I realized Mark was home. I bolted for the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, but Mark was already halfway down, his eyes blazing with fury. "What are you doing down here?" he demanded, his voice low and menacing. I'm sorry," I stammered. "I just got curious." He grabbed my arm with surprising strength, dragging me back towards the altar. "Curiosity killed the cat," he hissed. "And in this case, it might kill more than that." I struggled, adrenaline fueling my fear. "Let me go! You're insane!" Mark's grip tightened, and for a moment I thought he was going to kill me right then and there. But then he pushed me away, his expression shifting to a cold, calculated calm. "Get out of my house, now. And if you tell anyone about this, you'll regret it." I didn't need to be told twice. I raced up the stairs, grabbed my essentials, and fled. As I drove away, I glanced back to see Mark standing in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the flickering lights from the basement. That night, I checked into a motel, my hands still trembling. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw those symbols, that book, Mark's furious face. I knew I had to do something, but fear kept me paralyzed. The next morning, I went to the police. They listened with skepticism as I recounted my story. "It sounds like you just had a bad dream," one officer said. "We'll look into it, but there's not much we can do without concrete evidence." Days turned into weeks, and I heard nothing. I found a new place to live, far away from Mark's house, but the nightmares continued. Then, one evening, I received an anonymous envelope containing a single photograph. A picture of me sleeping, taken from inside my new apartment. There was no note, but the message was clear. I moved again, changed my phone number, and tried to erase every trace of my past. But I can't shake the feeling that Mark is still watching, still waiting. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights sends a chill down my spine. I know he's out there, and I know one day our paths will cross again. Living with a secret like this is a curse, one I wouldn't wish on anyone. My only hope is that by sharing my story, someone will believe me and stop Mark before he claims another victim. Because curiosity may have spared the cat this time, but the shadow of that basement still haunts me, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks just out of sight. I had just moved to the city for a new job, a fresh start, and I was excited about all the possibilities ahead. I didn't know anyone, and finding a place to live in such a bustling metropolis was overwhelming. I was grateful when a colleague at work, Hillary, recommended a roommate. She said her friend Karen was looking for someone to share her apartment and assured me Karen was a fantastic person. When I met Karen, she was incredibly welcoming and the apartment was perfect. Spacious, well lit, and in a great neighborhood. It seemed like a dream come true. The rent was reasonable and the first few weeks were smooth. Karen was friendly, but gave me my space, which I appreciated after long days at my new job. One evening, after settling in, I decided to take a relaxing bath. As I was soaking in the tub, I noticed a peculiar glint coming from an electrical outlet on the opposite wall. At first, I dismissed it, thinking it was just the light reflecting off the water. But the more I stared, the more unnerved I felt. I got out of the tub, wrapped myself in a towel, and approached the outlet. The glint was still there, a tiny, almost imperceptible flash. My heart began to race as I knelt down and examined it closely. To my horror, I realized there was a small, almost invisible camera lens hidden behind the outlet cover. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I backed away, my mind racing with thoughts. Who had put it there? How long had it been there? Were there more? The initial shock quickly turned into a desperate need to find out the extent of the invasion. I ran to my room and began frantically searching for more cameras. I checked every outlet, every corner, every place where one could possibly hide. That's when I found the second camera, hidden in the vent above my bed. I felt sick to my stomach. The realization that someone had been watching me in the most private moments was terrifying. I didn't know what to do. Calling the police seemed like the logical step, but I was also paralyzed with fear and disbelief. I decided to confront Karen. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I walked into the living room where she was casually watching TV. My hands were shaking, and my voice quivered as I asked her about the cameras. "Karen, do you know anything about hidden cameras in this apartment?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me with wide eyes, genuinely surprised, or so it seemed. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and concern. I showed her the camera I had pulled from the bathroom outlet. "This was in the bathroom," I said, holding it up. "And there's another one in the vent above my bed." Karen's face paled, and she looked genuinely horrified. "Oh my God, I had no idea," she said, covering her mouth with her hand. "I swear I didn't put those there. This is so creepy. We need to call the police." Her reaction seemed sincere, but I was still wary. Together, we called the police and reported the hidden cameras. They arrived quickly, and the officers conducted a thorough search of the apartment. They found 2 more cameras, one in the living room and another in the kitchen. The police took the cameras as evidence and assured us they would investigate. They asked us if we had any idea who might have done this, but neither of us had any immediate suspects. Karen was visibly shaken, and I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. As the police left, Karen turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry this happened," she said. "I can't believe someone did this to us. Do you want to stay somewhere else tonight? Maybe with a friend or a hotel?" I hesitated, unsure of what to do. I didn't have any close friends in the city yet, and staying in a hotel felt like running away. But the thought of spending another night in that apartment was unbearable. "I think I might just go to a hotel," I said finally. "I need some time to process all of this." Karen nodded, understanding. "I'll come with you if you want," she offered. "I don't feel safe here either." We ended up staying in a nearby hotel that night, both of us too shaken to return to the apartment. The police investigation revealed that the cameras were professionally installed, and it seemed unlikely that Karen had anything to do with it. The landlord was contacted, and he was equally horrified, promising to enhance security and replace all the outlets and vents. I eventually found another place to live, and Karen and I drifted apart. The experience left a lasting scar, a constant reminder that even in the safest seeming places, we can never be too sure who might be watching.